Okay, we
Well,
got
this
it.
is wonderful.
Thanks for coming on, Vincent. It's a pleasure to meet you finally.
It's a pleasure to meet you too, and thanks for having me. And
Absolutely.
congratulations on your Rachel Pollack interview.
Oh,
She,
thank you. Thank you very much.
I mean, that name is she's amazing.
Yeah. I
She's
think of
amazing.
I think of all the things I've done on YouTube, and I haven't really done much, but I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, well, she's a great person.
She
She's
was
a
just
great.
so easy to talk to, and she's just such a great and like a genuine person, and just
Yeah,
so interesting and full of knowledge. So
I
it was great.
know.
Well, I'm very happy to be able to talk to you as well, and I think that
Well,
that's one of the really nice parts about this project is that I get to talk to cool people. It gives me an excuse to contact someone like you, and get a conversation going. So I'm very excited about that.
well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here.
Good.
I want you to see I'm in a wheelchair, but I'm
Oh,
not. I don't need a wheelchair.
oh.
But people see me in this and they go, "Oh, he's
You got me
crippled."
nervous there for a second. I
No,
was
no,
like, oh, I've
yeah,
got this guy out of the gurney here.
no. I was at.
That's so
I
the
was
nurse can wheel you off to the psych ward after.
at. Yeah, when the nurse comes, I gotta leave.
Right. You got
Time for
that
my
right. I'll
medication.
be right there with you. Don't worry about that.
No, I was at a Goodwill and I saw this wheelchair. It was $20, and it's got great wheels. I said, I got a computer chair at home. I would get those little wheels on. I said, this is great. I like
Yeah,
this thing instead. This is better.
absolutely. That's great. That's really great, man. That's classic. That's classic Vincent Pitisci right there. So,
Oh man.
surprisingly, I was surprised to find a few of my viewers didn't know who you were. Most of my viewers are probably going to know who you are, but
Right.
just for the sake of those who don't know, would you mind explaining, a little bit about your channel, like who you are and
Sure.
what your
Yeah.
channel's about?
Okay. My channel is my name, Vincent Pitisci. And or if you go to tarotmaps.com, it might have it on there too. If you go to my website, tarotmaps.com, there's a link to my channel there.
Cool.
And I've been reading the tarot for 50 years.
Yeah.
69 is when I started.
Yep.
And reading professionally since 93. My wife and I both. Well, she doesn't read tarot, but she's a reader. She's
Right.
psychic.
Oh, Linda, right?
Linda, yes. And she's not here with me right now, but she's out and about. But we've been a tag team for a long time. It's been wonderful.
That's
And
really great.
yeah, but yeah, so that's I have a number of books out there, 4 books right now on Amazon, and a couple of log books as well. And I got my deck of cards now,
Nice.
which I know you have.
Yes, very excited about that.
Yeah.
Well, so 1969. Well, that's like for me, I was born in 1982, and
Okay.
sometimes I feel old. I'm coming up to the age of 40, and my partner just turned 40. So but
Okay.
when I don't know if I can fathom that length of time reading cards.
Yeah. Well,
But
what's interesting about that is there's been a lot of changes,
absolutely,
and that's I think is one of the nice things about being able to share with other people is the changes that have happened over that time
sure.
is amazing. And my new book now is coming out by the end of the year. I'm working on that now. I'm actually taking the card definitions from that are right now, but I'm also putting the card definitions from 1980 in there,
That's great.
and I'm putting the card definitions from 1960 in there. I have printed material for both.
That's great. That's
And
beautiful.
I was looking at it. I was looking at this stuff. I'm thinking, what? This is what the card meant? Because
Not
now
it's
a lot of you wouldn't be able to even use a lot of that now because you can get in trouble. The card says that I see insanity or health conditions or
sure.
pandemonium, or this card says you need to see your doctor.
Yes.
You know,
I think a lot of those early definitions came from Atella or Atea. I don't ever know how you pronounce the names, but I know that there was a book that was written by Paul Hewson. He
okay.
actually created a deck, and he went back to like sort of the old definition. That sort of reminds me of that. But I mean, it's been done, I'm sure many times. But so
Sure.
1969, let's see, we got, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy was in 68 and Martin Luther King. You had
Right.
Jimi Hendrix playing the national anthem at Woodstock,
Ah,
right? In
yeah,
69.
yeah,
You had the moon landing, right?
yeah, right.
This is a great time of change and just what a time to be alive and to get into tarot. So
You
would you
know,
be able to maybe just tell us a little bit about how you got into tarot at that
sure.
time, and just maybe just try and explain what it was like, learning tarot at that time.
Well, at that time, well, for me, for one thing, I was raised with the paranormal metaphysics and the study of that. My mother was involved with it.
Yes.
So her friends were, when the people come over to the house, they're all involved with it. So I was raised with that. And so that was a big help for me.
Sure.
And in 69, I decided I was going to get involved with the tarot, but I was involved with a lot of other things. I grew up with that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was lucky with that. But as far as how things were back then, and there was a resurgence about that time about anything with the paranormal. Sybil Leek was the big witchcraft. She was a witch. Edgar Casey was big,
Yes.
and Zoller, I think, was the astrologer, and Linda. Oh, I forgot her last name, but I'm not an astrologer. But she was. There was some new interest coming out in all this stuff.
Sure.
People were reading things like Lord of the Rings and all this other anything mystical and fantastic, fantasy type of stuff,
Yeah.
and yeah. So back then there was just tarot cards.
Yes.
It was just one deck you could basically readily get. And I talk about that. It's funny you bring up 1969, the moon landing. Charles Manson
Yeah.
went nuts at that time.
Yep.
I was going to get drafted the next year if I didn't get drafted, but that was my draft
Oh,
would be up.
that's great.
And
Dodged a bullet there, literally, huh?
yeah, right, I did. I was number 245, so I wasn't gonna have to worry about it. But so yeah, it was a lot of things going. Nixon with the water. Well, Nixon was in. No, Nixon was president, but it wasn't Watergate yet.
Was he elected in? Wait, because I thought it was LBJ in '69, wasn't it? LBJ Johnson in '69, and then Nixon was in '70, I believe. Right?
Oh, okay, I'll have to check. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
I don't know why I know that. I just because I know it's in an even year. Usually on an even year is the like Kennedy was elected in '60, so
Yes,
you have
Kennedy
to.
was right. Yeah, that's true. But anyway, yeah. So I back then, I remember I talk about this in my preface in the book. I called up Crocs and Brentano's, which was the big bookstore at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, "You got tarot cards?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Will you hold the deck for me at the counter?"
That's
Because
amazing.
yeah, I know. They said, "Yeah, sure." So I went down there. I took the tray. I was 16, and I went to the counter. I was the guy who called about the tarot cards. He says, "Oh yeah." He says, "Here." He put a deck on the counter, and it was the Tarot Marseille. And there was no tarot cards were like playing cards. You didn't judge the way
Yes.
they looked. It was just that's the way a card looks.
Yes.
And I took them home, and that was that. But and then in 1970 is when U.S. Games reintroduced the Rider-Waite deck,
Yes.
and Eden Gray came out with a complete guide to the tarot. No, that book there, Pictorial Key to the Tarot by Waite.
Oh, this one here. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
This is
Yeah.
the one by Waite. This is Eden Gray here. This
Oh,
is
you
it.
bet. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
See, this is actually the original. So I have this was published in 1960. This is the Tarot Revealed, and this is like a really cool book I have in my collection. But it's a simpler version of the updated version in 1970. So this is
Oh,
just
okay.
mostly just pictures and definitions and things. But the guys from the folks from your generation, they learned with this book. I mean, it's amazing. Everybody loved Eden Gray. Even Rachel was telling me about Eden Gray.
Oh,
You know,
yeah. Well, she was probably the first one, as far as I'm concerned, that I came across. There was just no nonsense. This is how you read tarot cards.
yeah,
Nothing was confusing about what she was talking about. And she used the Rider-Waite deck in that complete guide to the tarot, which you just showed me.
yes,
And that let people know, I guess this is an acceptable tarot deck.
yes,
Otherwise, you would have probably just thought it was a novelty deck.
sure,
And you would have thought, well, the serious tarot cards are the Marseille. But And I think that I really think my opinion is that's why the Rider-Waite deck took off so well.
Yeah.
Is
I
even more.
remember you saying that. I did hear you say that. Totally makes sense. I mean, you know, because without the book, you really don't have a way to really get started. I mean,
Right,
you know,
right,
at least that you know of, you know,
right.
for me. I mean, there are some people that learn specifically from the deck, which is very interesting. You know, just use the deck to sort of learn, but you still need that little kind of bit of guidance, you know what I mean?
Well,
To
that's
push you in the right
that's
direction.
just it. What I mean, like Linda, my wife, excuse me,
Sure.
she learned because there was a psychic in the neighborhood, an older woman. She lived in Bridgeport or Bridgeview, and so she used to go to her house, and the woman, they would have a cup of tea or coffee or something together, and this woman would read Linda's cards, and she didn't use tarot cards, but she used playing cards, and so Linda said to her one day, she says, "Could you teach me how to read?" And the woman says, "Yeah, you could read. You could read right now." She says, "I can't. Well, I can't. I can't read. You know." She says, "Yeah, you can." She took the cards and she put them in front of Linda. Says, "Read me." And Linda says, "I don't know how to read these cards." She says, "Just pick them up and start reading them."
Yeah, I mean
And that's how she. And she did it. And then the woman says, "You did good. Come back next week. We'll do it again."
sure.
And that's how Linda learned from this woman,
Yes.
just by looking at them and seeing what come to her about the cards, and
Yes.
plus what she knew about the woman and how she read them a little bit, you know. And so really, there wasn't much really out there like there is today.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember being a kid, my grandmother, and you know, I had an Italian grandmother, and I was going to ask you, you know, how I'm pretty sure you're Italian with the name
Yeah,
Pitisci, right? You know,
yeah.
that's a great name for an Italian artist, by the way. I mean, it's like, you know, like Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. But you know, I remember my grandmother playing with she always played solitaire, but she didn't call it solitaire. She called it beat the devil. You know, she was
Oh
this
God.
old Sicilian woman. That's what she called it, beat the devil. And she
Oh
was always
God.
there with her. She always had a deck of cards in her hand. She wasn't into divination really. She was very superstitious. And she, you know, you have the Maloics, the Il Malocchio, all of that sort of
Yeah.
with the
Right.
olive oil and all their ancient, you know, pagan type practices that were
Yeah.
passed down, you know. And here's this woman, she's in church every Sunday, but she's, you know, practicing some sort of witchcraft. You
Yeah.
know, it's really hard to explain to people, but it's just that's how it was. But
Yeah.
she always had a deck of cards. So of course, you know, when I would go over there, I mean, that's what I played with. I used to build things with them, and I remember
Okay.
the very first sort of experiment with divination was with the playing card deck.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, and you know, sort of simple yes, no, you know, evens yes, odd no, you know, just playing games with the cards. And I
Okay.
think that was just what got me into. So I totally relate to that, and I think a lot of people got started with playing cards. You know,
Sure. You could read this book's out right now about fortune telling with playing cards.
sure,
You know, and so yeah, I've actually and the other you could reverse that the other way around. I've worked at places where you got a slow fair going on or something, and I played solitaire with tarot cards. You know, just
yeah,
take out the majors and
true.
take out the knights, and you got a deck of. You could use the deck as a regular deck of playing cards.
That's very interesting.
But it's funny because it doesn't work as well. But
No, I'm sure it doesn't. I mean, you have to get used to it. But I do have some tarot decks that actually, I don't know if you've seen the deck playing Marseille. Is it?
no,
I got it right here. Let me show you. I know you're not really into, you're not like a deck buyer. You know, that's one thing I noticed about you. You stick to the classics. You know.
I got a handful of decks, but I pretty much stay to the class. Otherwise, I know it's a can of worms that be open up.
Oh
You
yeah,
have a whole wall of decks over
smart man. Well, this
it.
one is pretty cool. It's you know, it's got the majors in there, but it also has the, you know, and it's a smaller deck.
Okay,
But
yeah.
yeah, so you know, you have the court
Oh yeah,
cards.
that's
So it's a
nice.
Marseille deck. It's just it uses the playing card symbolism. See, there's the
Okay.
lovers,
Oh yeah, okay.
and I believe it's based on the gosh, I think it's the Dodal or the Noble. I get the Noble probably. I always get the two confused. But
I don't know. I know there's a few different versions of it,
oh yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And
Um, So as far as, I'm sorry, as far
Yeah.
as the you said you were involved with some different things. Were you ever involved with like any organizations like the Golden Dawn or any
Well,
of those type of cult organizations?
I'm involved. Well, I'm not. I was raised with the Rosicrucians,
Okay.
and I was raised with the Theosophical Society. Because my mother, like I said, was a member of them.
Yes.
And so and what's nice about the Theosophical Society is their national headquarters is right here in Chicago. There's
Okay.
40 acres of land. People that work there live there, and I speak. That's where I do some speaking there, and I've
Nice.
done some classes there. And there's a New Age bookstore on the grounds called the Quest,
Yes.
and I'm a house reader at the Quest.
Beautiful.
You know,
It's really
so
nice.
but so yeah, I was involved with those two organizations. But it's funny because I was there at 5 years old at the Theosophical Society because my mother and my stepfather used to go, and they'd have little get-togethers over there,
Yeah.
socials, and like I said, it was 40 acres of land,
Yeah.
and I'd be the only kid out there. I'm thinking I'd be out in the grounds. I'd be thinking, oh man, you could play cowboys and Indians out here.
Sure.
If there was any other kids out here with me, it'd be great. I'd be the only kid there, you know.
Yeah.
But to show you how crazy it was, I mean, how long that's been, that was in the late 50s.
Wow.
And I remember people smoking in there.
Interesting.
You know, you imagine somebody lighting up a cigarette in a place like that now, it'd be like
Right.
insane, you know. But yeah, it was just a whole different time,
Oh yeah.
you know.
Definitely.
And but they still have a library there that you can go check out books and things like that. But with the internet, you don't really need that anymore,
Yes.
you know. So,
Definitely.
but yeah, I
So
was involved with those places, and I'm still, you know, active with the Theosophical Society.
nice. Very
Yeah,
nice. So,
yeah,
one thing. Just a few questions about you. You know, shifting sort of to your work
sure.
now. I've noticed that you're very much a conceptual reader. Like you don't really rely much on the images, which is interesting because you're an artist. You know, you're not like an intuitive type reader from the images. You're more of a concept guy. Like you have the concepts in your mind, and you rely a lot on language to sort of develop your reading. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is just
No,
what I'm getting from reading your book,
yeah,
and I'm reading Genius of the Tarot right now, which by the way
okay,
is
yeah,
great. You know, just watching your videos over the years. And I've just noticed that you're not really into, like, in other words, you could use any deck and the
yeah,
reading would roughly be the same. Is that
yes,
a fair statement?
yes, it is. I don't like to think that I would read differently with a Thoth deck from a Rider to a Marseille. To
Yes.
me, the Five of Swords is the Five of Swords, no matter what
Yeah.
deck. And that's the way I like to read. And maybe that's because I use different decks all the time.
True.
I'm partial to the Marseille, but if the phone rings and I pick up the Rider deck, you know,
Yes.
that's the deck I got here. Okay, I'm doing a phone reading, you know, and so I have I use the Greer, Aquarian, the Sacred Rose,
Yes.
um, and the Marseille the most though.
Yes. Yeah, I know you like the Marseille. I've recently got into Marseille a lot. I have a bit of a theory on why that is. I think it's a generational thing, you know. I think the old schoolers, you know, because you didn't have so many decks, you know, you sort of, it wasn't really all about the art. Like, see, today it's mostly about the art now. You know, if you look at Kickstarter, which is where, you know, it's like a crowdfunding source
Yeah,
for new artists and all these different decks that are coming out. I mean, you have decks uh, about everything. You know, I remember hearing you joke about the gummy bear tarot. You know,
yeah,
but it's very true, and you know, but it's all very much based on imagery, I think, and the images sort of tell the story. But yeah, so I think that's why it is. I think people who learned at an earlier age tend to just read the names of the cards and you know, just they already have, you know, Page of Swords already in their mind. You know what I mean? So
I
maybe that's
I think that's probably true. I have I teach, um, I mentor, you know, tutor,
yes,
and I do classes too. But and a lot of the people I teach, they have these newer decks, and they said, Vince, you got to see this deck. And I look, and the artwork, like you say, it's just beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
That's like I said, I want to get involved with collecting cards. I'll go broke, you know.
Right. No, I totally understand that. That's
They're beautiful.
yes.
And I try to, I tell people, well, it's okay. That's still the Ace of Wands.
Yeah.
And, but you're right. If you want to get into the images and the way the deck looks, there's a lot out there to see.
Yeah.
And I use that a little bit, but I try not to. I try to stay more like with what's coming in my mind about that card. But I have used it as an example. One example I've used was the Chariot card.
Yeah.
On the Rider deck, and somebody came to me, wanted to know if they were going to get a job, and they had wristbands on their wrists from carpal tunnel.
Okay.
And I threw that Chariot card over. First card I threw over. It was a Rider deck, and the charioteer is holding the harnesses, and he's got this armor plates on his wrists, part of his armor. And I saw those, and I saw the wristbands on his wrists. He was going back for a second interview. I said, take those things off your wrists, because it's going to cause a lot of confusion.
Sure.
Look and say, we're going to hire him. He's got something wrong there.
Yeah.
And he did, and he got the job. So that's an intuitive thing. That's all.
Absolutely. No,
you use things like that, but the decks, I think the biggest confusion people have today, though, is what's the best deck for them.
Yes.
You're going to invest a lot of time learning a deck. You want to make sure it's the right deck for you.
Sure.
And that becomes very hard for people to know, am I using the right deck? Though this other deck just came out, I got to check, I like this deck. And then you start going in that direction.
Yeah.
That's why I just tell people, whatever deck you're using, anything you're learning from me is going to work.
Yeah. True.
And
well, you're a smart man for avoiding the deck collection craze, because it does get a little crazy, and I myself have to sort of be a little more conservative with the decks that I buy, because I'm a collector. I've always been a collector. When I was a kid, I collected baseball cards. I collected anything, and so of course, just people who have a tendency to collect things, obviously, and they like tarot, are just going to accumulate decks.
Oh yeah,
I think that's inevitable.
Yep, today you will, for sure. It's so easy to do now.
Oh yeah.
Like I made my deck.
Yeah.
That's just a Marseille deck, but I was able to put it out there for people to buy.
Yes.
You couldn't do that 40 years ago. You had to get a publisher.
I'm going to get to your deck in a second, because I do really love your deck, and I have some questions about that. But I wanted to ask you about elements. So, and this may be a little bit tough to explain, like sort of in this situation, but you don't really consider elements in a reading, which I found really interesting. I think you said, the seeker determines the suit, in other words, with their question.
Right.
So I found that really interesting. So could you just maybe elaborate about that,
Sure.
and explain to how you came up with that?
Well, when I do a class, if I'm doing a class, or even when I'm teaching people, I tell people that, for one thing, if you use reverse meanings, there's 156 definitions then, and that's too many.
Yeah.
So I knock out reverse meanings. I don't use them. I don't read them that way. I also don't use the suit. So in other words, so now you have 22 majors, and the minors consist of 14 meanings, ace through 10, and 4 court cards, regardless of the suit. There's 4 aces. Aces all mean the same thing. There's 4 6 of wands, or sixes, 6 of wands, cups, pentacles, swords. They all mean the same thing. 6. I use the numerical value more than anything.
Yes.
After that, if you want to go into the suit and say, okay, we can go from there. But I said, just concentrate on that. So now you only got 36 meanings to worry about instead of 150.
Yes.
And if people just go, oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Because this makes it so much easier. Then from there, if people want to learn more, they can learn while they're reading instead of reading books about it before they start reading. Now they got enough to know where they can say, okay, this is how I read now. I could throw over cards and figure out and get better at this, but I could also learn from reading about books too.
Yes.
And so that helped. To me, if you, I use the four suits as the four basic functions of consciousness. I don't go into the fire, water, air, earth. I look at the four basic functions of consciousness: thought, emotion, the spirit, and your physical world. So let's say fives. Fives to me are change. If you want to use a suit, you could say, oh, I see a suit of cups, emotion. Five of cups would be a change in my feelings.
Yes.
Five of swords would be thought, a change in my thinking.
Yeah.
Or a change in my material world with the pentacles, or a change in my spirit, what inspires me with the wands. But really, all four of those are affected no matter what you do anyway.
Yes.
Maybe one more than the other. You've got a new relationship, that's going to be cups, but it's also going to affect your thinking. It's going to affect your spirit. It's going to affect your physical world. So I look at the suit that way, where it's secondary to me.
Yeah.
And I use it, but at very, very little. And also coming from a time when a lot of readers just use the majors anyway. They didn't even use the minors.
Yes.
You could look at it and say, well, I still have a lot of options with just using them that way.
Yes.
So
I find that so interesting. And, I'm really enjoying your book. I got to tell you, especially with the spreads. I mean, your spreads are phenomenal, and I'm definitely very intrigued with them. And that's probably my favorite part of your book.
Good. That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
I was going to ask you about so the elements, for me, I feel like that's a very good way of learning. Like you said, it's like, it's almost like it's great for a beginner. And actually, honestly, I watched you in the very beginning of my tarot journey, and I didn't realize how influential you were until I got your deck and I looked at the little card here, and I was just looking at all the meanings for the numbers, and I was like, because I mean, no matter what book you pick up for numerology and tarot, everybody has a different approach. You know what I mean? It's like you got the Pythagoreans, you have the Kabbalists. But I was just looking, and I'm very much in line with most of your numerology. I think we differ a little bit on the quartz. But I do tend to, consider the suit in the reading a little bit.
Most people do.
Yeah.
And a lot of my students, I tell my students that too. I have students people that were my students, and later on they'll come up and say, you know what? I'm using reverse meanings. I just want to try them. I like them.
Yeah.
It's great. We still talk, and they still talk to me about the tarot, but they use something I don't use, or I use the suits a little differently than you now. But they still like what I was talking about, and they blend them in their own way.
Yes.
They want to at their speed. And what I like about the way I teach is whatever you're learning, you don't have to back up and relearn, because now you're going to add reverse meanings, or you're going to add the suits in a different way.
Sure.
Or something like that, and it helps out a lot. And to me, the best way to learn is read.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Any way I can get them to get their hands on these cards and start putting them on the table. From there, you're gonna spend your whole life learning anyway. I'm still learning about these cards.
Sure.
I could say that I could call myself somebody who's pretty well know what I'm talking about after 50 years. I better know.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Somebody come up to say, Vince, I've been reading for 50 years now. How you doing? I say, well, yeah, I'm getting better.
It's true though. I mean, it's, I always say, I'm a lifelong student of the tarot, and the one thing I do like about your channel is, you offer a lot of information, and you don't, it doesn't seem like you're really in it for the money, or you sort of give a lot a information, and a lot of, I don't want to knock anybody else, because I
know.
understand. But what I'm saying is it's just a lot of information. I mean, someone could learn reading the tarot just by watching your channel, and I really like that about your channel.
Well,
And of
thank
course,
you. Yeah, I do that. Yeah, and I do that. Well, for one thing, it's not costing me anything, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of that
sure,
to be part of the tarot community, especially after this long. Like I said, I'm 67 years old now. It's not like I'm just starting out with this.
yes,
So it's time for me to start sharing and seeing I can do it for nothing.
right,
And not only that, but also it helps my book sales.
yes,
So even though I'm talking about what's in the book,
yes,
people still want to say, "Okay, I like what he's saying here," and they buy the book anyway.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so instead of saying, "Well, here I'm going to teach you this, but if you want to know more, sign up for my class," I don't want to bother with that.
No, I totally get that, and it's just a really nice thing that you're doing. It's sort of like doing well by doing good. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Well, thank you.
It's very admirable.
Well,
Um,
that's why, and that's why I made the deck. I made the deck because I wanted to have I wanted to be able to use my cards in my next book without paying royalties.
sure.
If I use a writer deck, I got to pay for royalties, or if I use another deck, you got to pay for the rights for that.
Yes.
And so I thought, well, I'll make my own deck, and I'll use that because I know how to do that. And I said, well, I'll make it, especially with the writer. I mean, with the Marseille, it's a classic look.
Yes.
And this way, when any books I make, I could use my own cards. But the files came out so nice. I thought, well, you know what? I want to see what it would take to make a deck. And I looked into it. I could have these things printed, make a box,
Yeah.
and sell them.
Everybody loves your deck. I really, really love it. It's very interesting, especially it came out at a time when I was sort of into Tarot de Marseille.
Okay.
And the one thing I got to say was, well, I want to ask you, obviously you talked about the, sort of the motive behind creating it a bit, but what I found very interesting was the colors that you used in the Tarot de Marseille. And I was trying to find, another deck, like a historic deck where I could sort of compare it to. And it seems to be more like, a Nicholas Colmbert type, you know what I mean? I was trying to figure out, did you get an influence from somewhere with the colors? But very interesting color palette. So did the colors mean anything to you? Like, what was the inspiration of the colors? Like, could you just tell us a bit about the process of that?
I wanted to get out of the carnival colors, the red, blue, green, yellow. These were big in the 60s, I think. And I thought, well, I'm going to go with a more earthy look.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go with brighter colors because they would sort of like modernize the deck. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep a feel where it's still antiquated. And I thought, well, if I go with earthy colors that work with each other, it would be good. And the colors came out. They came out nice.
Oh, they're great, man. Exactly, earthly. I really think that really hits the nail on the head.
Well, I was in the graphic arts for 30 years. I was a color specialist. I reproduced artwork and photography for printing. And so I worked with a lot of advertising agencies and things like this. So I knew the printing background about things.
Yes.
And so that's maybe, I'm able to use software like Photoshop and things like this and come up with nice palettes.
Yes.
I say, well, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. And that helped me a lot. I think if I was doing this all with paper and pencil or paint, I don't know if I would ever come up with those colors.
No, I get that. I mean, listen, everybody uses that anyway, technology.
Okay, yeah.
Well, now now that you've created your deck and it's sort of done really well, and I'm going to put the link in the description box, of course, to your website and to your YouTube channel, if anybody wants to buy this. But now that you sort of have this under your belt, you might want to, maybe if you get bored again, you can create another one. You know what I mean?
You know what?
Put it on Kickstarter.
Here's the other one.
Okay. So you do have another.
I do have another. It's the same deck. This was the first deck.
Okay.
And what I did is I took the majors and I gave them a black background instead of.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, yeah, they're nice. I gave them a black background. The minors are exactly the same as the old deck, the other deck.
Is this going to be available to purchase, or?
Well, people are wanting it. So,
Yes.
people like this, but the majors have that, and then the minors are still the what I have on that deck that you have there.
Okay.
The reason I did this, the reason I switched them all to all common background is because the deck is Creative Commons deck. In other words, you can write a book on the tarot cards.
Yes.
You can go to my website and download the whole deck, print ready files, and put them in your book.
Yes.
If you do that, more than likely the body of the book's going to be black and white. So
True.
you convert this to a black and white, it's going to look like mud.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what? If I'm going to put this in my book, I can't use this deck. I can't use this. I'm not going to have it in color.
Yeah, so all the majors have the black background, and then the pips are the same with the same white background. Is that what we're saying?
Right.
Okay. Well, you
Right.
could always sell a majors only too. Do sort of like a little thing where you have like a majors only deck.
Well, I'm going to probably put this whole deck out. I got it all ready to go. All I got to do is go to the printer and say, run them, print them.
Well, I would definitely buy a copy.
Okay.
I really like it.
A lot of people want it, and but if you wanted to make like I said, if you wanted, it works out nice. I like it, and my reason for that is because when you see the majors on the table with the minors, right away you see that's a major, and this is a major. You just and so yeah, I probably will put that deck out.
I think that also makes it easy to separate them too. If you're doing a majors only reading, like if you're doing the 4 Winds, which you talk a bit about in your book, or something like that, where you're using majors only,
right?
And you can separate them easily.
I like the look, so yeah, it probably will be on the market.
That's great. No, I definitely I will stay in touch with you about that and
Okay.
try and follow it. This way I can follow it along and help you spread the word about it.
A lot of people like it, and they want it, so I'm gonna have to put it out.
Yeah, great, man.
So yeah, it'll be out.
Fantastic. I'm excited. I'm one of those deck crazed lunatics. I have to have every single deck that I love, unfortunately, and it's an expensive hobby, but it's one that I really like. But I don't have many other vices. I don't spend a whole lot of money otherwise. So tarot is like my only guilty pleasure. So
there could be worse things to get involved with. That's for sure.
You got that right, for sure. And I would be able to find them too.
One thing I wanted to say that I thought be interesting to mention is that if you're going to publish a deck now, there's a standard size for tarot cards, and it's 2 3/4 wide by 4 3/4 high.
Yes.
And so you go to a printer and they'll say, okay, you're going to make tarot cards. Here's the template. And this is what the size of we're going to die cut them to this size. We're going to collate them into a box from this size,
Yeah.
And, but the Marseille deck, the artwork is 4 3. This is the same height, but the width was narrower.
Yes.
By 1/4 inch.
Yeah.
So it's 2.5 inches wide, where the newer ones are 2 3/4 inches wide. It's 1/4 inch. So I actually had to redraw or draw in parts of, like on the King of, I'll show you, on the King, you'll see, it's just, here we go. I took this out already. Marseille, and in mine, you can see I had to draw his elbow in there.
Interesting.
And I also fixed his shoulder. His one shoulder has got that white.
Yeah.
And the left shoulder.
Which deck is that anyway? Is that the Ancien? Is that the Grimaud deck?
This is Grimaud.
Yeah.
Yes. And
I actually have that deck on order. I'm waiting for it. But
Grimaud? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, the one that's currently out, not like a vintage one. You probably have a nice vintage one, huh?
I got old ones, but.
Well, those are the good ones.
I've had so many of them. Let me show you this. This here is a stack of spare cards. Grimaud.
Wow.
So let's say I lose the 9 of Pentacles from a deck. I can go get another 9 of Pentacles out of this stack because
That's great, man.
I got a whole stack of them here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're using these. That's your work tools. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You are using them like crazy. That's great. I think that's just wonderful.
Well, what was
Where do you
interesting?
purchase them when you do buy them? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Oh,
you off
that's
there.
okay.
Well, because I know Grimaud isn't really like it's not on Amazon, for instance. You got to go to Amazon France. I had to anyway, or you can get them on eBay.
Okay. I back in the 80s, um, I was lucky. Well, maybe it was the early 90s.
Okay.
One store went out of business that we were working in. I bought a couple decks there. I
Okay.
already had a couple
Yeah.
for myself. And after that, people said they just were off the market. Nobody was buying them anymore.
Yes.
So any of the new age bookstores I saw, nobody had the Marseille deck out. Grimaud's deck wasn't around.
Right.
And I don't know why people, maybe because nobody's buying them or because they stopped selling them or what. But so I went on eBay and I looked for them and I found a few decks there. So I have about 6 decks now.
Nice. Yeah, I think I found that I ordered it from France because I actually ordered something for a friend anyway, and I had to order it from France, and I saw they had it on there. It was like 17 euros for the Grimaud deck, which I thought was really inexpensive, brand new. You know, I don't know how good that version is, but it's
Oh, I'm
probably not
sure.
as thick as the older versions. You know,
No,
and good.
let me show you the thickness here. I'm going to wheel right over
Go
here.
ahead. This is great.
Yeah. Here's here's your standard deck size. This is the old thickness
Yes.
of the from the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit thicker. And then this is from the 60s. That's even
Wow.
thicker than this. So this deck is really thick.
Yeah.
And it's just you look at this is a deck of tarot cards. That's a thick deck of cards
Yes, it is.
compared to what you see today.
Yes,
You know,
definitely.
you know,
Everything was just better quality back then, I think.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
So if I found these on eBay, or if there was times where I could buy these myself in the store.
Yeah.
And but if I saw them on eBay, I would pick them up because you're not gonna. These are actually too thick.
They're probably so expensive to buy now. Like, that specific version, it costs you a couple $100 probably
People
on
are probably
eBay.
asking $100 or more. Yeah.
Easily.
Okay. Yeah.
For that. Oh, I mean, you got to see some of the decks they have. I mean, some of the prices. The Greenwood Tarot, for instance, which is out of print. I saw that on eBay for like $5,000. The it's insane. And I
But
would never pay a price like that, but people do. It's just
you don't know if anybody's going to buy it though either. People put a price
true.
on it, just leave it out there.
True, but they will sell for in the thousands. They will sell for because Greenwood, if it's an original Greenwood.
Okay.
I mean, they yes, you're right. They do there's a difference between priced on eBay and then purchased, but you can also check what the decks have been sold, and
Okay.
they are very pricey.
Okay. I
But
believe it.
you gotta hunt around for something like that. Sometimes you gotta look for like the buy now, or somebody just lists it and you can find it. They don't know what they have, or they want to price it to sell. It's like a flea market or anything else. You got to really look for it. And usually I find if I'm a little patient, I can find a deck for a decent price and not pay something silly. But I would love to get that one.
Here's another one you might like. Oh, sure. You get them right over here. Here they are. So if you see these on eBay, you might want to grab them. This is the same deck.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And it's in a different box, but it's the Marseille, and they come in 2 packs here, 2 packs of cards in a box here.
Nice.
But this is the real thick ones.
Yeah.
But so I'm just letting you know it's out there in case you
No,
see the
definitely.
stock say, "Oh, hey, somebody might be selling
No, I
that for."
appreciate that, and I know some of my viewers are taking notes right now. Some of
Okay,
my
there you go.
Marseille people, they're writing down this information as we go because a lot of us are into deck buying, especially people my age that are into tarot. We all and younger, we all like to buy decks. It's what we do. That's part of the tarot tube universe is deck buying. I mean, it's just a big part of it. But I
No,
appreciate you showing me those.
and there's beautiful, like I said, the decks that are out there. But there's more decks of tarot cards made in the last 50 years than the whole history of the tarot.
Yes.
To take the 500 years before that combined, it's not going to come anywhere close to what's out there now. And the different versions of the cards, people are just, it's so easy to do now. And it's beautiful. The artists are fantastic.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, some of it's overkill, some of it's a little overboard and too much. But if there's people willing to pay the money for them, there's a market for them. I mean, who am I to judge? But some of the decks I see, and I'm just like, there's a deck called the coronavirus deck right now on Etsy. It's called the coronavirus tarot deck. Could you imagine?
Oh
And it
my
has
gosh.
stuff about corona. I swear, I kid you not. There's another one. It's a deck of all towers. The tower.
Uh-huh.
All the 78 cards is the tower card, but they have like little images added, like the full on the tower card. It's just like, okay, we've it's like tarot meets Godzilla. You know what I mean? It's like it's just, it's getting like the Rocky movies now. You know what I mean? It's like
The
oh
Rocky
boy,
movies, yeah.
yeah. It's
Rocky
Rocky meets Godzilla. Oh boy.
Oh, that's funny. No, yeah, I think it's that. Like I said, what it's really one of my people that I know just showed me I think it's called the True Black.
Yeah.
It's a thick deck, beautiful stock.
Yeah.
It's really not good for cards because it's hard. There's no slide.
Yeah.
In the cards,
True.
But it's a thick deck. It's all black and silver background back, I think, and but beautiful artwork. And but
Yes.
I don't see how you could use the deck, and
Right.
because there's no just stealing the cards off.
Yeah.
And but
that's another generational thing. I think you and Rachel were basically saying the same thing about the cards. You can't shuffle them, you can't use them. They don't have the slide. I feel like a lot of and then another friend of mine, Robin from Toadstool Tarot, he always talks about the thickness of that and not being able to. He likes a little gloss. I just feel like the people from a different generation, they were used to playing cards the way they were, and that's what you're used to. But see now, I'm not a riffle shuffler, so I don't riffle shuffle.
me neither.
So I have big hands, so I don't mind like the awkward shuffle. But I guess if I'm throwing the cards around all day like you are, it might maybe get annoying after a while.
No, well, yeah, you just got to find what's good for your hands,
Yes.
And then if you're a woman though, if you want to, if it's an issue, I would say the Mary Hanson Roberts deck is a good deck.
Yes.
And
That's one I don't have actually, but I do have I think she redid one of the weight decks. Didn't she do the universal weight deck? I
Yeah.
believe, yeah, she redid that. That's the
Yeah,
only deck I have.
Yeah, she did the universal weight. She's a color pencil artist.
Okay.
But her images on her deck, Mary Hanson Roberts deck, is very close. They're taken after the Rider deck.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of picture, only
Yes.
it's her rendition of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the Morgan Tarot or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting.
Right, like the Morgan, right. But it's a small deck.
Yeah.
And or you could also get the bridge size version of the Rider deck, but that's too small. Bridge card, it's a bridge. It's smaller than it's like a small deck of playing cards.
Sure.
It's thick still,
I actually have a deck now I'm using. I don't think I have it close by, but it's called Naked and Cut. It's a friend of mine. He designs them. Conrad Stein, his name is, and I don't know if you're familiar with MakePlayingCards.com, but you can sort of customize your own deck. Like if you want you can print your own deck, like sort of per order. But he prints a little deck of cards, which is it's just the art of the Wade Smith. It doesn't have titles, but they're Trump size, so they're bigger than Bridge, but they're like smaller than tarot. It's perfect size. I love that. It's good for on the go, like if you're on the go, if you want to just grab a deck, if you're going out, I do a lot of like hiking and stuff like that. So
Okay.
it's nice to have like a small deck with you can carry in your pocket or in your bag. It doesn't take up too much
Sure. Yeah.
space. You know what I mean?
Do you do any like festivals or anything like that?
No, I'd like to. I mean, right now, see, with coronavirus, it's impossible,
Yeah, right.
unfortunately. But I'm definitely going to do that in the future. I have a small group of people I read for, right now. Nothing serious, but I'd like to do it more, and it's a bad time right now. So
Well, after this virus is all over with, yeah, get yourself a canopy. I tell people, a good way to start reading pro is to get yourself a canopy tent, 10-foot square, and a couple card tables or a couple tables at the hardware, Menards or something.
Sure.
Folding chairs. Get a banner at Vista Print or whatever. Tarot readings. Put it up in front of your tent, and become a vendor at one of these festivals.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you feel uncomfortable about charging for your readings as a professional, then do it 1 year and just put a sign up that says free tarot readings.
Sure.
And put a tip jar out.
Yeah.
Put that tip jar out, and you will make money, and you'll have a line in front of your tent because it's free.
That's a really good idea, actually.
And you feel comfortable about it because you're not charging.
Yeah.
And you can put on there for fun and entertainment only or whatever you want, but so it's light and breezy. It's a festival. What's nice about that, we used to do about 4 a year. And then we went down to like 2 a year now. And this year we didn't do any because of the virus. But what's nice about that is it's an annual thing. So you're there every year. And so the next year now you start charging $20 for a reading or something.
Yeah.
Last year you were free. Well, the same people are coming back because it's their neighborhood fair. They go there every year, and they'll see you and they'll see the tent. So, I got a reading from you last year.
Yeah.
You get to be known that way.
Definitely. Yeah, I've done some parties and I read a lot for a lot of people, and some, a lot of my close friends I don't charge, but they always send me something on Venmo after, and I'm like, I don't want it, but they send it to me anyway. And I'm like, they just call me like for whenever something happens or they need some advice, and that's kind of cool. And that happened by accident, so it was never anything I was looking for. It just sort of found me, so I think that's an indication that I could possibly do it professionally. I would love to be able to make a living doing tarot. I mean, not have to be bothered with a lot of other stuff. Just, it's very, it's my passion, and I envy people that can do it and make a living. You know what I mean?
You can do it. You can do it.
Definitely.
I know you can do it. I could tell. I just read your cards. You're gonna do it.
There we go. Now you're talking. Very nice.
You'll do fine, but you got it in your heart, so that's why you'll do it.
Beautiful. So just one other thing. I know this might be a little bit heavy to answer in this kind of setting, but I know that you have an answer, and this is why I want to ask you.
Sure.
But why do you think that the tarot works? I've heard you explain it, but in case my viewers, I just found it really interesting, your theory, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because that's why I write books on it. I think it's today it could be explained. And going back to like Eden Gray's book, A Complete Guide to the Tarot. In that book, she says, for some reason that we don't understand, these cards seem to shuffle themselves and give us answers. So we never could explain why they worked. And that's always been the biggest mystery of the tarot. How can we have a question we don't have answers for. I sit down with a deck of tarot cards, I apply a reading, and now I got answers. I didn't know how I can get them, but I got them.
Yeah.
And so it's a real strong illusion that I'm getting, these answers are coming from these cards. Today we have creative thinking techniques out there in psychology. It's been studying this for about 50 years now. And I, when I came out with Genius of the Tarot, I talked about it as being a mind map. A card reading is a mind map, and a card spread is like the basic branches of a mind map. And the finer branches of a mind maps are illustrated. But the finer branches of a mind map are verbally expressed in a tarot reading. So the finer branches of a mind map from position 6 would be me talking about what I'm seeing there. The finer branches of position 3 would be me talking about it. And then I realized also when I came out with Essential Tarot, it's something even more than that. It's called conceptual blending, which is a creative thinking technique, which it's important to always fragment a question before you look at it, break it apart into sections. Things that pertain to the question that we're going to look into. That's what we do with a card spread. A card spread is positions. Each position of the card spread is supposed to be something important that we're supposed to be looking into about a question.
Yeah.
And tarot cards are randomly placed in those positions, and then associations are made between the tarot card and the position it's placed into. Today, that's called conceptual blending, and it's used in medicine. Conceptual blending is used in artificial intelligence, in science, technology, and it's identical to a card reading. And it's identical for the same reasons. The purpose is for the same thing too, to find answers we didn't see before. And the reason a card reading is effective is because of the application, not the cards, as far as I'm concerned. And if you talk to anybody who's ever taken any classes on creative thinking, a psychology class on creative thinking, and you tell them how a card spread works, a card reading, they'll probably say to you, "Oh yeah, I took that in college. That's called conceptual blending." Conceptual blending is adding any randomness to my question, and making associations from that randomness. And how can this randomness help me find an answer for this aspect of my question? A good example of that I use is Louis Braille. Louis Braille was blind as a young boy, and he became blind because of illness. He was sitting in the backyard under a tree. His dad was working in the yard, and he wanted to know he wishes he could read a book again. And he picked up he was reaching around. He picked up a pine cone. I have a pine cone here somewhere. He picked up a pine cone. That's what I use when I talk about it. He picked up a pine cone, and he's feeling the points on a pine cone. And he thought, well, what if I put points on paper in certain patterns to symbolize letters? And he came up with Braille. Braille is from Louis Braille.
Yeah.
He invented that from looking at a pine cone, feeling a pine cone. That's conceptual blending. Anything that's ever been, any new ideas is usually done by taking something we're totally familiar with and adding it to our question. Like a tarot card to a position in a card spread. It forces us to use our imagination and that side of our mind to come up with new ideas because we don't have an answer with our logic.
Yes.
And that's used by Fortune 500 companies. It's used by branches of the government. NASA used it. They're making the Hubble telescope.
Yeah.
They could not figure out how they're going to focus a telescope to look light years into space because the telescope extends or retracts its length for focus. But to look light years away, you'd have to be able to extend this thing out till who knows how far. And one of the people in that think tank was in his hotel room, and he's taking a shower and he's thinking about this question, how are we going to focus this thing? They almost 86 the whole project, but they couldn't focus. And as he's adjusting the shower head opened and closed stream of water. And he thought, well, what if we took a telescope and adjusted the focus by widening or retracting the opening instead of length? And they looked into that, and they were like they did with water from the shower head, doing that with light and the depth of field in a telescope. And that's how they ended up with the solution of how they're going to focus the telescope. So that's random stimulus added to extra sections of your question. How can how can a shower head help us focus a telescope in a deep space? That's called conceptual blending.
Yes.
How can a pine cone help the blind read books? Conceptual blending. How could a tarot card placed in the positions in a card spread help me find new answers? This is identical application, forces us to use our mind to make associations between this tarot card and the position it's placed with in relation to the question I'm looking into. Today, that's defined as conceptual blending, a major creative thinking technique based on the way the mind naturally works anyway.
Yeah.
And that's why it works. At least that's my opinion.
That's a good opinion. It's a very valid opinion. I mean, that's the most common sense answer that I've ever heard anybody give for why the tarot works. I mean,
yeah,
it's very common sense, and it's scientific. It makes sense. I mean, who can argue with that?
Well, what's good about that is if we understand why it works, we can improve it.
Definitely.
You can't improve something if you don't know why it works. So if this is why it works, which it sure seems like it does, it is the reason, at least I feel it is, then we can now go into making it better.
True. And that's where your spreads come in? Is that why you've tweaked your spreads?
Right.
And you've done all those things.
Right.
That's phenomenal. I got to say, your book, the spreads in your book alone were worth the purchase. And I'm looking forward to getting your other books. I have the Kindle version. I wish I would have gotten the paper copy of it. Okay. And so I will definitely probably do that. Or I know you have your spreads in all of your books, right? All of the spreads are in.
Yeah, I have.
In all of your books. So,
all of them, right.
What's the other books? If you just name them, do you have
Genius
of the Tarot, right?
Genius of the Tarot, and then that's my first book, and then I came out with the Essential Tarot, Unlocking the Mystery, and that's my second book, and that came out in 2015. And that's the black cover.
Oh yeah,
my spreads are in here too. And then I came out with Radical Tarot in 2017, I think.
Yes.
And here, got it. Same here. And then those three books are how to read tarot cards.
Yes.
I came out with Straight Tarot, How to Survive as a Tarot Reader, on how to make a living at it.
Yes.
But that's not how to read tarot cards.
No, I get that. That's a book that I want to get to because I have a few on that already. That's on my list.
That was a fun book to write.
Nice. Very nice. Well, Vincent, is there anything that you want to tell my audience, or any upcoming events, anything that you want to add to our little chat today?
No, I'm just tell everybody thank you for having me. I hope everybody likes this, and I'm gonna put this on my channel too, so people from there can know that you're around too.
Oh, thank you, Vincent. I appreciate that very much, and I'm going to put all your information below. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. I, as a thank you, I don't know. I wouldn't know what to get a guy like you, but I want to send you something. And I don't know if you have you seen this book? It's called The Library of Esoterica. It is so it's a really beautiful book by Tashin. And I think it'd be very helpful for a writer because it has, all these beautiful images of all the historic decks.
Wow.
throughout history, from early stuff, and it's just really, really nice. I really like it. And it's like you can have the images without owning the decks. So I'm going to give that to you.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I,
thank
I really
you.
appreciate you coming on today from the bottom of
Well,
my heart.
thank
Thank you.
you. And I'll return the favor when I get my placemat done. I'm making a placemat for my tarot for my cards. It matches my cards.
Nice.
When I get that done, I'll send you a copy of that.
Beautiful. Sounds like a fair trade to me.
Justin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Vincent.
And
Take
we'll talk again.
Absolutely. Definitely. Bye-bye, Vincent.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.